This is no longer a crisis. This is a systematic collapse. $23 billion, equivalent to the defense budget of a small nation, was once expected to change the game in the fight against homelessness. A massive number once hoped to shift the battlefield against homelessness. But nearly a decade later, tent cities still line the streets of Los Angeles, rent has doubled overnight, and over 500,000 people have no place to call home. Follow me through the numbers, the promises unfulfilled, and the cries left unanswered in California 2025. The richest state in America is slowly dying on a bed of torn tents. To understand why one of the wealthiest states in America now has over 500,000 people pushed out of society. California, where statistics no longer stay in reports but spill onto the streets. You can read these numbers in any news briefing. Over 500,000 homeless people in California, a rise of dozens of percent in just 1 year. But what you don't see is how those numbers show up every morning in the face of a stranger washing with bottled water on the sidewalk, or the sound of a child doing homework under an ATM light. Each day, nearly 1,000 people across the state lose their homes. Every afternoon when you finish work, hundreds more curl up under bridges, in a state with a GDP equal to Germany's. California doesn't lack money, yet somehow it lacks shelter. What's scarier? Most of them aren't in shelters, government tents or emergency beds. Nearly 2/3 build homes from tarps, cardboard, old cars, and whatever they can scavenge. On sidewalks, in parks, outside Walmart parking lots. This is no longer a crisis. This is a slow-motion collapse. Piece by piece, person by person, night by night with no one answering the knock. And do you know what's even sadder? There are nearly 200,000 students in California, kids still wearing school uniforms who live just like that. They sleep in cars, on friends' floors, or anywhere they won't get kicked out. Their homework doesn't start with math. It starts with the question, where do I sleep tonight? This isn't just a housing issue. This is where shallow policies crash into harsh reality, leaving hundreds of thousands trapped in the void of a system with no idea how to hold them. Why do you think the more California spends, the more homelessness grows? Bad policies or people gaming the system? What's your take? Write it down. Don't keep it in your head. From wildfires to breakdown waves, the trigger of the homelessness crisis. The homelessness crisis in California didn't appear in a vacuum. One key trigger was the massive wildfire in the Los Angeles area in 2024. Considered one of the worst urban disasters in a decade, entire neighborhoods were burned to the ground, forcing thousands of families to evacuate, losing their homes in mere hours. But the material losses were only the beginning. Right after the disaster, the housing market entered a turbulent phase. After the disaster, rent in LA surged 124%. Hotel prices doubled in just days, pushing countless low-income families onto the streets. Price hoarding and hikes pushed many financially fragile families beyond affordability. A large-scale population shift soon followed. Those who lost homes or couldn't keep renting in Los Angeles moved to other cities within the state, unintentionally straining areas already short on affordable housing. Rent prices in second-tier cities and suburbs rose simultaneously, triggering a new wave of instability across California. The hardest hit group was the working class and lower middle class, people with jobs but incomes too low to keep up with rising living costs. With not enough temporary housing, public spaces became makeshift shelters for thousands. We lost everything, only the clothes we're wearing remain. A 34-year-old mother now living with 2 kids in a parked truck in Fresno's suburbs. Her story isn't unique. It reflects a chain reaction where a natural disaster turns into a housing crisis, and from there leads to widespread social breakdown. They spent tens of billions, but what about people like Tasha? Tasha doesn't know how many billions California spent to end homelessness. She only remembers the day her landlord changed the locks and she and her daughter packed up the rest in silence. They said the government had a program, converting old hotels into new housing for the displaced. And the first email Tasha got from that system sounded promising. "We will contact you soon when a room becomes available." 6 months later, all she got was a sorry email, and the waitlist was too long. While waiting, she and her 14-year-old daughter lived in an old truck parked behind a Walmart. They bathed with wet wipes, ate with food stamps, and slept to the sound of engines running all night. Each time she passed by the hotel that was supposed to be their new home, Tasha saw the lights still on, but inside, empty. No one allowed in. "I pass it every day," she said. "Dozens of rooms, locked tight. We sleep in a car, so where did the money go?" And Tasha isn't alone. In Oakland, I met Terrence, a 59-year-old former utility worker who served the city for nearly 20 years. After a failed hip surgery, he couldn't return to work. His disability aid was denied for lack of continuous medical evidence. His savings ran out in 4 months. After that, he lived in a tent, 12 minutes walk from City Hall. "I used to hang Christmas lights on those streets," he pointed downtown. "Now I wait for hot meals from volunteers under the bridge. They don't remember me, but I remember them. Everyone." Terrence also applied for state housing assistance, but each time he called, there was a new staff member. His file got lost twice. After more than a year, he's still in the same place. Waitlist being updated. Los Angeles, the hotspot at the heart of the crisis. In 2025, Los Angeles recorded over 195,000 homeless people, up 35% in just 12 months, the fastest rise in the city's modern history. According to the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, LISA, 131,000 people lacked any form of shelter, sleeping outdoors nightly, under bridges, at bus stops, or in makeshift roadside camps. More alarmingly, nearly 48,800 people were chronically homeless, living long-term without housing, often with mental illness, addiction, or disabilities. This is the group at highest health and safety risk, placing the heaviest burden on the city's health and welfare systems. Children aren't spared. Nearly 30,000 LA students experienced housing instability this past school year. Most live with parents in cars, temporary camps, or informal shelters, environments lacking sanitation, security, or proper learning conditions. The picture gets more complex with LA being home to nearly 840,000 undocumented immigrants. They live in society's gray zone, no access to subsidized housing, no legal work rights, no healthcare or welfare access. With housing prices rising and a tight job market, they're the most vulnerable to homelessness. The numbers speak. Inequality in the homelessness crisis. California's homelessness crisis doesn't affect all demographics equally. Beneath the surface of an economic and social phenomenon lies deep demographic cracks, revealing disparities in race, age and family status, and access to housing and public welfare. Race and ethnicity. The most disadvantaged communities, Black people, though only 5% of the state's population, make up over 25% of the homeless who access support services. Latino individuals saw a 22% increase from 2020 to 2022, and by 2025 account for 44% of California's total homeless population, a warning sign of how vulnerable immigrant and low-income labor groups are. Meanwhile, white and Asian populations have significantly lower homelessness rates compared to their population share, partly reflecting differences in financial assets, social networks, and housing access. The story, A Generation Left Behind. Angela Torres, a 62-year-old Latina woman, used to work as a medical assistant at a small clinic in Riverside. After her husband died of a stroke in 2021, she fell into depression and took a leave of absence. When she tried to return, she found herself too old to be rehired, but too young for full retirement. Without health insurance, no savings left, and rent that had doubled, she was evicted after 3 months of missed payments. I used to think homelessness was for addicts or the unemployed. I never imagined I'd sleep on a bench behind the city library, she said, while lining up for a free meal at a mobile food station in Pomona. Angela is one of tens of thousands over age 50 who can no longer compete in the modern labor market, but are also not protected by any strong public welfare system. Social structure, the fragility of singles, and the elderly 80% of California's homeless population are single individuals, many having lived alone for years with no family or social support. 14% are families with young children, struggling with rent, childcare costs, and documentation barriers. 7% are unaccompanied minors, a group extremely vulnerable to abuse, exploitation, and violence. Over 40% are above age 50 like Angela with no stable pension, health insurance, or emotional support system. The numbers signal a cracking structure, but it's faces like Angela's, people who worked their whole lives, paid taxes, were pillars of society, that truly show the cost of a system that no longer has room for the vulnerable. 2035, a dream on paper, but who's strong enough to wait? They say by 2035, homelessness in California will be completely eradicated. Do you believe that? Because when that promise was made, Tasha had already spent over a year living in a truck. Marcus, a former Marine in San Diego, had endured his third winter in a torn tent. And Terrence was still waiting for a call from an organization he no longer remembered the name of. Estimates show that to reach this goal, the state must invest over $110 billion in 12 years. That's about $9.1 billion per year, enough to build nearly 1,000 homes a day. But in the past 5 years, California has spent over $23 billion. And what's the reality? Hotels remain empty. Children still do homework in the backseat of a car. Mothers still change clothes in public restrooms. And people who once worked, paid taxes, and tried still sleep under bridges like they never existed. They call it a vision, but all we see is fog, Terrence says. Every time I hear 2035, I just wonder, will I live that long? To fulfill that promise, the government must do what it's always avoided: touch the hardware of the problem. Not print more flyers or speak at conferences, but cut red tape. Accept building public housing right in wealthy neighborhoods. Force grant-funded organizations to disclose spending. And start by answering each person, not by building more systems. But, most importantly, change the way we see it. Homelessness is not a problem of the weak. It's a certificate of failure from a system that no longer holds the honest, the sick, and those who worked a lifetime. If California truly wants to stop this nightmare, it must begin with the truth. And the truth is, no one can wait until 2035 if tonight they have nowhere to sleep. Ending homelessness isn't a PR campaign. It's a race against fading hope. And every second of delay is one more person disappearing in silence. Do you think California really wants and can end this crisis? Leave your comment. Psychological and public health impacts, the invisible scars. Behind the massive homelessness numbers are hundreds of thousands of untold stories of loneliness, trauma, and lifelong mental scars. Living on the streets long-term doesn't just wear down the body. It causes serious psychological trauma. Studies by UCLA in 2024 show 64% of California's homeless have had suicidal thoughts at least once. Over 70% suffer from chronic anxiety symptoms. 1 in 3 people who've been homeless for more than 6 months suffer from PTSD. The stress of living in unsafe conditions, lack of privacy, rejection, and daily discrimination rapidly deteriorates mental health. Meanwhile, the public healthcare system isn't designed to meet these specific needs. Mental health centers are overloaded, understaffed, and the support process is too complex. Marcus, 44, a former Marine now living in a tent near the San Diego Pier, says, "I thought I was strong. I survived war. But coming back, I lost on my own soil. I can't sleep. I fear car horns. I fear silence. I once hoped to be arrested just to get a bed and a few quiet nights." While most of the public debate focuses on how many homes we need to build, the psychological toll, the main barrier preventing many from reintegrating, is often overlooked. This isn't just a housing crisis. It's a crisis of dignity, spirit, and community connection. No money, no power, still taking action. People within the crisis. Amid a broken system where billions of dollars may be wasted on tangled bureaucracy, there are still people quietly making change. Without titles, without power, just with compassion. From small nonprofits, spontaneous volunteer groups, to former homeless individuals coming back to help others, they prove that solutions don't always have to start with the government. James L., 38, spent 3 years living in a car in Oakland. Now he runs a small community group called Restart, providing food, personal supplies, and job support for newly homeless individuals. "I know the feeling of being forgotten. I used to eat and sleep under that bridge. Now I go back every week, not to remember, but to pull someone out of where I once was." At an elementary school in Santa Ana, teacher Alina Ramos hosts an evening class just for homeless kids. A place where they can learn, eat dinner, and rest before their family's car takes them back to the parking lot. No signs, no funding, just books, bread, and an adult who believes no child should be left behind. In Fresno, the volunteer nursing team, Hope on Wheels, drives a truck to tent communities weekly, offering basic medical care and free mental health counseling. "We can't heal every wound, but we can show them someone still cares," said the team leader. These people don't fix the whole system, but they keep compassion alive and create small stepping stones to help others rise again, one by one. Over 500,000 people have no home, not because they chose that life, but because the system failed to hold them. Where did the money go? Do the policies truly save lives? And why does spending more lead to more people on the streets? We've just witnessed the story of California 2025. The richest state in America is slowly dying on a bed of torn tents. If you believe truth shouldn't stay silent, leave a comment and hit subscribe. Not to argue, but to remember that this is really happening. Every subscription is a reminder there are still people who care about justice. Thank you for staying until the end. Your quiet presence is the reason we keep telling, sharing, and seeking truth. This video was made based on trusted sources and real stories from the community. We strive to bring a perspective that is objective, layered, and deeply human.